Hey friends, thanks for joining us. I'm very excited to have back on the line the CEO and president of Callinex Mines. It's Max Porterfield, and since we last talked to Max on July 12th, 2015, the GDX Market Vectors ETF has moved from 13 to 23, and the Junior Miners ETF, GDXJ, has been equally impressive with a rise from $17 to over $35. And Max is here with us right now from London, where he's attending a conference for work. Max, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. It's always great to speak to you and your listeners.
Well, we're thrilled to have you, Max. And like I said, since we last talked on July 12th, 2015, a whole heck of a lot has changed. Let's start with your thoughts on Deutsche Bank now admitting to rigging both the silver and gold market and agreeing to provide evidence against other criminal banks.
Yeah, I think it's incredible to actually see someone actually admit wrongdoing in this. Everything everyone's always thought prior to now is kind of unfolding to be true. I know we discussed it last time I was speaking with you back in July, and I think the story is just really beginning to unfold with, again, as you mentioned, them turning over other people that are involved in the scheme, because I guarantee it wasn't just Deutsche Bank alone.
Absolutely not Deutsche Bank alone. In fact, I'm sure they can point the finger at Scotiabank, HSBC, and if their finger is long enough, certainly JP Morgan would be in the mix. And, on our last call, during our last interview, you said, and I quote, "How is it legal that JP Morgan is solely responsible for 96% of all commodity derivatives, while Citigroup is single-handedly responsible for over 70% of all precious metals derivatives," end quote. With Deutsche Bank admitting to the rigging of both silver and gold, don't you think these men behind the curtain have been revealed on a global stage at this point, Max?
Well, I think they're definitely becoming, being revealed. Most certainly, whether anybody actually takes a fall for it is a whole other discussion in its own right.
Right.
But I certainly think it is good that someone's being held accountable in some form or fashion, and at least we kind of understand what we're dealing with
Now,
on a bigger spectrum.
Yes, and now Deutsche Bank, of course, has opened itself up to billion-dollar lawsuits because of its illegal dealings in the precious metals space, and I think that is in itself good news, regardless if any of these banker insiders ever go to jail. Nobody from Goldman ever went to jail after the 2008 debacle and their mortgage-backed securities, so we don't expect any of these guys to do time, but won't the reward for investors and those of us who are silver and gold bugs be in the real-world fair pricing of precious metals here in the near future? I mean, how do you explain the move in silver up over, $3-4 an ounce in just a few short months? It's amazing. It seems to me that because of the demand for physical in China and all over the globe and the failing confidence in the LBMA paper schemes and the COMEX paper schemes, that the real-world pricing is starting to be seen. Do you agree?
Yeah, I think the real world pricing is beginning to be seen not only in the precious metal space, but I think the same is being played out in other base metals as well, where in terms of underlying all this manipulation and what we like to have a bigger picture conversation on what we've been discussing just now is really the supply and demand fundamentals for all these commodities. I mean, if you look at zinc, where we accountants are kind of looking to position ourselves with the exploration that we're doing. I mean, zinc has been running a supply-demand deficit for quite some time now. We've got 10% of supply coming offline from mines that are no longer in production because they're into their mine life, and above-ground inventories are being dwindled rather quickly. Just over the last 3 years alone, you've had over 60% decrease in above-ground inventories for zinc. And I think you're setting up yourself for a bull market in zinc, for example, as well. So I think it is healthy to see that the bottoming of the junior mining index is kind of playing suit, and it's really going to be backed by fundamentals on the supply-demand side, for example, in the zinc that we just mentioned here.
Yeah, and when we last spoke, you did talk about the zinc supply side shortage and the copper supply side shortage, and you said the only way new supply is going to come online is with higher prices. Now, given the falling global silver production and the demand fundamentals, the silver supply versus demand fundamentals that we see in that metal, how high do prices have to go until we see that new mining supply come online?
Yeah, I think for every individual commodity is going to be have its own supply-demand fundamentals that are going to be driving prices. I mean, if you look at zinc, for example, in terms of what you need to incentivize new supply, a majority of zinc production occurs as a metal byproduct, meaning just like a modest increase in zinc prices won't be sufficient to really incentivize new supply to come online. So again, if you look back to 2006, when you had this kind of same supply-demand fundamentals for zinc playing out, you had zinc go to $2 a pound. Today, zinc's at roughly 75 cents. So, I think, again, we've bottomed out. It's been a tough bear market for us, but I think investors that have stuck with the space are going to be rewarded going forward because of these kind of things that we're seeing in the market.
Well, I really wish that I would have had a crystal ball the last time we spoke. Again, that was back in July of 2015. And, here we sit in April of 2016 with the most incredible moves. Again, those ETFs, the Junior Miners ETF, the Market Vectors Gold Miners ETF, both almost doubling in just the past 3 months. Does that move surprise you as much as it surprised the rest of the world?
I don't think it surprised me more so. I mean, it was about time more than anything, the way I look at it. I mean, it's been so long that this bear market has persisted. I think it's been overall, it's going to be healthier looking back on this. We are going to have corrections here or there. I think that's healthy for any starting of a bull market is, having corrections. But, the price moves in the juniors always, have leverage to commodity price increases. And I think, now is no different moving forward. And I think that the sector overhaul was extremely oversold from a technical standpoint, too.
Well, that's for sure. And again, I think it leads me back to the narrative of the paper Ponzi scheme and the paper schemes at the LBMA and at the COMEX being revealed for the world to see. Even if none of these bankers go to jail, the genie's out of the bottle, right? And the secret's out. I think that must be contributing to this move in some way.
No, absolutely. Well, that allows, if you start getting some of the manipulation to come out of the market for fear that people are going to get called out on it, then you can allow, like I just mentioned, the underlying fundamentals to play out, which is what I think you're seeing.
Okay.
So I wholeheartedly agree with what you're saying, yes.
Okay, well then let me ask you this. Do you believe this rally is for real? Because one of my trusted contributors and a writer at Bullion Bulls Canada, his name's Jeff Nielsen. He also is a contributor to Sprott Money, a very good researcher and writer. He's convinced that this is a banking crime syndicate script for the markets, and they're allowing this fake rally to move higher so that they can come back in and crush the metals and, again, absolutely kill momentum. I don't think that's true now at this point because we see silver leading the way. And a big part of his thesis was that during the early part of this rally, we saw gold leading the way higher. In a real precious metals bull market, we need to see silver leading the way. And now we do. So do you think this rally is for real?
Yeah, I definitely, like I mentioned before, I think this is signifying a start of a new bull market. What we've been through recently, these nice gains. I can tell you right now, I travel really frequently around different investor hubs, not just in North America, as you know, I'm here in Europe as well. The sentiment is improving quite significantly compared to where I was last November when I was in Zurich, for example, where people were very, very negative. I think there's a bit more optimism in the space, particularly the precious metals. And I think in a not too distant future in the overall base metal space as well, as I kind of mentioned earlier. So absolutely, but I think investors should be aware and be prepared for, pullbacks in any bull market, and that's just overall healthy for any kind of bull market that you're in. While I do think this is where we're at, it is a bumpy road no matter how you look at it, but definitely a lot more upside ahead of us.
Okay, well, let's talk about the global picture as it relates to physical gold. Many Americans question whether or not there's any gold left at Fort Knox. We can't really get an audit. Fort Knox hasn't been audited since, 1954? You're a native Texan, but you live in Canada now. Did you happen to see the recent news about the Canadian government selling all of the rest of its own gold reserves? And did that shock you?
Yeah, that would kind of left me scratching my head. I don't really know why you'd be doing that, but again, that's more of the moves to all these governments debasing their currency away from gold. So it really shouldn't be surprised. If you look at the decision that was made a number of years back in the UK with Bank of England, the central bank, selling all their gold or a big stake in it, it was obviously poor timing. So I wouldn't be looking at it as a negative side for gold prices, but more or less more of the same old from the central banks globally.
Yeah, well, I was thinking the same thing about what happened in England back in the early 2000s there when they sold all their gold at the bottom.
Yeah, I don't know a lot of people laugh at when they look at that, but I just shake my head, really.
Well, I think it was perfect timing for those who bought the gold. So,
oh yeah, absolutely. Whoever bought the gold was on the right side of that trade.
That's right. Well, and as usual, the people are on the wrong side of the trade because we know the banks run. For instance, we know the banks run the U.S. government, We know it because the DOJ would not prosecute anyone from Goldman for the mortgage-backed securities fraud and the criminality that was being done that led up to the 2008 crisis. And they colluded with the DOJ. The DOJ colluded with Goldman people to come up with this idea that there would be collateral consequences for the economy at large if Goldman was prosecuted and if anybody there was brought to justice. So we know that the banks really run these governments at this point. So I think the idea of England selling its gold into the hands of the Rothschilds or any of these criminal banks makes perfect sense since we know the banks run the show. That's just my thought on it. And now we see China, the world's largest gold producer and a net importer of physical gold, with Chinese consumers, unlike the American consumer, who have an appetite for physical gold. So we can see in very tangible ways now, Max, gold really is moving from the west to the east, isn't it?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I 100% agree with you on that. I mean, it's in their cultural, their culture to have an affinity for gold. If you look at global consumption on an annual basis, there is a seasonality historically. I wouldn't say more recently, but historically, you have a seasonality to that jewelry buying that you're tied to. And in fact, jewelry buying makes up well over, I believe, 50% of global production. And again, it goes back to gift giving based around the Chinese New Year in China. And there is no different if you look at India as well. They're big consumers of gold. And that goes back to culture. And you can't change thousands of years of culture instilled into a population.
Let me ask you this. This is going to shock you, but I got to share this with you. You probably have not seen this yet since you're traveling and you're in London. I'm going to read an article here for you in a second, but let me preface it by saying I believe at this point that the powers that be, the IMF, the Bank of International Settlements, the Rothschilds, whoever, the people at the very tippy top of the pyramid have had their sights set on the death of the dollar and moving us toward a global currency by 2018. The reason I am sticking with that prediction and believe it to be true is because the cover of The Economist magazine back in 1988 had that phoenix rising from a burning pile of fiat dollars, and around its neck was a gold medallion that said 2018, and the cover of the magazine said, "Get ready for a global currency." 2018. Here we sit almost halfway through 2016, and guess what the Treasury just announced? Jack,
what's that?
Listen to this. It was reported that the U.S. Treasury will announce its plans to replace former President Andrew Jackson on the $20 bill with Harriet Tubman. And there will also be changes to the $5 bill to depict civil rights era leaders. Now, I have to tell you, Max, when I first read this, I thought it was satire. I thought maybe I was being punked, so I had to double check. Politico's reporting on it, CBS is reporting on it, and can you even imagine a government that has such distaste for its foundational principles that at this point, given the flood of fiat dollars and the destruction of the dollar on a global scale, that now they want to pull the president's image off the bills? I think it's stunning.
No, it's absolutely stunning. Stunning is a great word for it. Incredible is another great word for it. I don't know what really to add to that. It's just, you kind of left me speechless. I mean, at the end of the day, I have nothing against civil rights in the history and how that is really played out in the U.S. But for it to go on the currency is a whole nother situation. I mean, we already have holidays to remember that, but I don't know why you're touching the greenback like that.
Well, and listen to this, though. Think about the symbolism. Andrew Jackson stood up against the bankers. Andrew Jackson stood up for gold and silver and honest money. And Andrew Jackson, the symbology of Andrew Jackson on the $20 Federal Reserve note cannot be lost on those of us who are awake. And to remove Andrew Jackson from the note at a time when the world is turning against the dollar, I think is very, very heavily symbolic.
I would agree with you. That's very symbolic. And let's see if it actually happens. Hopefully something goes out and changes that. But it is a shame to see that happening because from a symbolic standpoint, it is very damning.
It's beyond the pale, but nothing this government does at this point surprises me. Let's talk about exploration. Let's talk about Callinex. What is going on with Callinex in this environment where the juniors are now finally on fire for the first time in 5 years? It's an amazing environment and an amazing time to be the CEO of a mining company.
No, absolutely. I'm very excited for everything that's going on with the company. I'm very excited about the space overall. During the down cycle, we were able to put together a great team that's been associated with a number of economic high-grade base and precious metals-rich deposits in Canada. We were able to bring on a great shareholder base with resource capital funds. It didn't affect us at all in bringing in, continue to raise capital. and we've deployed that capital and done that in exploration. We've had success on our past 2 drilling campaigns. We announced a discovery at our Sourdough Bay River Pine Bay project last summer, just right around the time we were speaking that was occurring. And then more recently, we announced another discovery in another area of our property that was rich in copper there. So I see a bright future for us, and I think right now we've got a lot of legs to run going forward. And you know what? We see this as a tremendous opportunity still to grow and acquire additional properties. So I see that in the future for the company as well, and really grow the project portfolio and resources the company controls at a time when the market's turning and a time we're seeing a potential increase in these base and precious metals going forward.
Yeah, and just so people understand, you guys are located in the mineral-rich region of Manitoba, Canada, as opposed to so many mining companies that are down in Mexico. As we look further down into South America, we see absolute socio-economic chaos breaking out in Brazil. Venezuela has already fallen apart with hyperinflation kicking in. You guys are in a very stable area of North America, and to me, I think that's a real benefit, is it not?
No, absolutely. I mean, we wanted to stay in a stable jurisdiction. We love Canada. You've got the rule of law. You've got the rich history of mining within the country. And you know, from Vancouver, where I currently reside, I mean, I think that's really the hub for exploration globally. And again, aside from the stable jurisdiction, you've got that rich mineral endowment. So you've got, you know, for example, in Manitoba, in the Flin Flon Greenstone Belt, where we've been doing exploration over the past 2 years, you've got over 90 years of continuous mining production there, over across 32 different mines. So you've got the rich mineral endowment, and it's just a great place to be. Really happy to be there.
And guys, just a reminder, if you're hearing some noise in the background, that's because Max and I are talking live from London, where he's there at a conference, and he's taking the time to step out and speak with us, which I really appreciate. Hey, Max, before we let you go, in a sea of, you know, potentially thousands of juniors in which people could invest, it's my understanding that Resource Capital, which is a heavy hitter, just took a 17% stake in Callinex, making it only the second exploration play they've ever invested in. That's a pretty big deal, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a real big deal. We're one of the first exploration companies they've invested in their exploration portfolio that they've just put together there. They're a very sophisticated investor group that does their due diligence. And really, at the end of the day, they invest in Callinex based upon the team. Because, again, as you know, in any business, whether you're running a cafe or you're doing exploration, you got to have the people behind something to really make it happen. And we've got an excellent team. I'm really proud of the technical team that we've put together here, and they're all driven and focused. And again, from an exploration standpoint, an exploration business, you can have a great project, but without the people to unlock the value, then have the know-how to do it, that project isn't going to be worth as much. And we think that's where we're really be able to create a lot of value. And that's why we've been able to have shareholders like Resource Capital Funds invest in the company. So again, I'm really proud of our team.
Well, would you do this for me before we let you go? Will you shout out the tickers? I think on the over-the-counter in the United States, Callinex is listed as CLLXF. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. We're traded on the OTCQX under the ticker CLLXF. We also trade on the Toronto Venture Exchange under the ticker CNX. You can always find out more information on our website at Callinex, CALLINEX.ca, and feel free to give our office a call anytime.
Well, thanks a lot, Max. We sure do appreciate your time. And again, guys, I'm stunned by the fact that the GDX ETF has moved from 13 to 23 in 3 months, and the Junior Miners ETF GDXJ has moved from 17 to over 35. Max, I'd love to have you back again in the fall, and let's see how high the prices have gone by then.
Absolutely. I look forward to speaking to you again soon.
All right. Thanks for taking the time to step away from your conference. And guys, sorry for the noise in the background, but Max Porterfield's a straight shooter, and he's been our guest. He's the CEO and president of Callinex Mines. And we thank you very much for your time, Max.
Thanks so much. I appreciate you having me.
Thank you. And guys, thanks for your support at sgtreport.com and thelibertymill.com. Real news 24/7. Have a wonderful week ahead. God bless.